Hello all and welcome to another video on the channel. This video today is about a very serious subject. It is all about mental health and well-being, men's mental health in particular. Now before we get into the video and before I introduce my guest today, I just wanted to give you all a warning that this video will contain some sensitive issues. So if you are at all triggered by anything regarding mental health and well-being, perhaps choose not to watch this one. And do remember, as I point out throughout the video as well, that if you are feeling down, if you're feeling low, if you're feeling anxious or depressed or hopeless in any way, do reach out for help. There is help available to you, and I'm posting links to lots of resources that you can look at in the description of this video. So without any ado, let's get into the video itself. Thank you. So I'm delighted to say that my guest today is my very good friend and colleague from Insight, Adam Tevendale. Adam, welcome. How are you today?
Yeah, really well. Thanks, Peter. Thanks for having me.
It's a great pleasure. So we've been trying to get this conversation going for a while, but we're both very busy people. So I'm glad we finally got the opportunity. So much like yourself, Adam, you are a massive advocate for mental health and well-being, and you're one of my fellow mental health first aiders here at Insight, which we're both very passionate about. And you've kindly agreed to join us today to tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey with all things well-being and mental health. So if you wouldn't mind just starting by setting the scene, introducing yourself a little bit, who you are and what you do, and then we can get into our conversation.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so Adam Tevendale, as we said, we work together at Insight. My main role is an account manager, but I think you've touched on it there. They're very passionate about mental health, well-being, and in particular men's mental health. I think mental health can affect everybody, but from my point of view, it's always been, men have struggled to talk about it. So for me, it's breaking that wall, breaking the stigma, and getting people talking about their own mental health. I know it's not easy for everybody, but I want to talk about my journey, and if it helps at least one person, that's the main thing. 38 years old with a beautiful wife and two beautiful children. I guess long before that, I had sort of troubles when I was younger, which I'll go into. But I think that's where my anxiety, depression sort of stems from. So now, obviously, I'm in a much better place and I'm managing that. But I think it's important that we tell people what happened and what I do, I guess, to cope with the daily pressures of life. Don't get me wrong, my life's not difficult. I've got a good job. I've got, we have holidays. I've got a beautiful family, as I said, but sometimes it's tough and sometimes you need a little bit of help and support. So that's mainly what I want to do today.
Oh, amazing. Thank you, Adam. And I'm sorry I said your surname wrong. Tevendale, not Tevendale. I should
A lot
know
of
better
people
than
say
that.
it's
People say
fine.
my wrong all the time. So at least
Well,
I
I
know
don't
that.
know whether it is Tevendale or Tevendale. I've always gone with Tevendale, so as
Yeah.
long as it's not obscene that you're calling me, that's fine. Call me what you need.
I've had all sorts over the years with my surname. I've had raisins and Reisling and writhing, and it's a
It's the
strange
kids I
one.
feel sorry for. They've got it for the rest of their lives, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. But that's wonderful, and I couldn't have put that any better myself. But maybe if we could start by going back to the beginning of when
Yeah.
you first realized something was changing in your life, and you were experiencing these anxieties and feelings of depression. How did it all begin for you?
Well, I think that what I've learned now from the therapy that I've had is that a significant life event can cause this. I think, I'll be honest with you, Peter, from being a young lad, I was a very nervous kid. I used to get upset. I remember my dad telling me I was upset when something on the news was pretty damning, and I'd get upset by it and say, oh, that's not fair. And I think that I've always been like that. But then when I was 14, my mum and dad got divorced. I think that whole messy process of, do you want to come and live with me? Do you want to live with me? I'm obviously very close to my dad and my brother. So from being 14, I had to really grow up quite quickly. And I think for many years, I suppressed that upset of my mum leaving, if you like. And a lot's happened in between. I don't have a relationship with my mum now, but I have other people in my life, my stepmum, my mother-in-law, people like that I'm really close to. But I think my point is that just sort of really, that life event kind of screwed me over a little bit, is the honest answer. And I suppressed that because 14 to 20, I was out playing football, going on nights out, holidays, stuff like that. Didn't really have time to think about what had happened and process, because I was too busy trying to enjoy myself and being a teenager, if you like. So the only time I really realised it was when my son was born. So when Harry was born, he's now 9. The first few hours, unfortunately, he had something called meconium, which is really not life-threatening, but at the time when you've got this, hours old baby and they have to take him away, to look after him, it's really scary. And that's where I changed, where I thought, well, I don't really care about myself anymore. It's about Harry and obviously my wife. But yeah, so being a parent, I think, is when it first started. Your anxiety levels are always high as a parent, I think. And this is not to say that if you're not a parent, you can't suffer with mental health or anxiety. But again, you just worry about your kids. It's, my biggest nightmare that something happens to to them, either one of them. So yeah, I was adjusting to that. And at the time, I guess I just put it down to being a new parent and thought, everybody goes through this, everybody feels this way, so we were okay. And I do a presentation. I've done quite a few presentations, in particular on my daughter, Phoebe, who is 6 now. I don't want to blame Phoebe, but she was completely different to Harry, and it completely changed our lives because she was so different, and a lot more, I guess, testing. And I'm sure she'll watch this when she's older and think, hang on a minute, Dad, what are you blaming me for? But yeah, she certainly tested the different environment that we'd got. So my wife obviously was going through her own things, and I just suppressed it all, Peter, to be honest. I just thought, I've got to get on with it. I've got to be a man. I've got to work. I've got to earn money, look after my family. And that's very much the attitude that I've been brought up on, with a dad that's very much, you've just got to get on with it, man up kind of thing. So that's when I eventually got to a point where it all just accumulated to the point where I had a bit of a breakdown. I would suggest that it was in a breakdown in the way that I would then just be honest with everybody and just say, look, the people I care about, my wife, my dad, my brother, for instance, my sister-in-law, those sorts of people, I'm really struggling, and this is why. And I needed to get help, because what scared me was that I was going to a place I didn't want to go to, and it was getting closer. And I'm thinking, I've got 2 kids and a wife to be with who want me here, who want me as a person. Hopefully people that see this and know me know that I'm quite an outgoing, like to have a laugh kind of person. But for a 2-3 year period, I just wasn't myself. Very angry, very on edge, fed up with everything. And it's difficult for people that live with you because you're not telling them the truth as to why you're being like that. They just think that you're being that kind of person. But yeah, I just felt like I needed to be honest with the main people that care about me and love me, just to, just to explain that that's what's happening. I must call out Insight, because Insight helped me a lot with getting some therapy and getting some sessions with the charity Mind, which did help. I don't know how they helped, I'll be honest, because they just listened. But I guess we'll get to that of talking and listening. But yeah, it kind of just crept up on me. But now I know, looking back, there's obviously a lot of factors in there that build up and then eventually just break. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, since I've started being honest with people and talking and thinking, if they can't deal with it, that's fine, but I need to tell people that I'm struggling, I've been 100 times better, which is great for me and the family.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Very, very powerful, and appreciate you sharing that. And it's hard to make that first step to sharing how you're feeling. So it's a very brave thing to be able to do after bottling that up for so long, and we as men, we do tend to do that more
Yeah, a lot. Yeah.
than women, don't we? So because we've got these traditional masculine, feminine roles through history, and thankfully that's changing now. And
Absolutely.
uh,
Yeah.
we as a gender are starting to find our voices and become a bit more comfortable and confident about sharing these experiences. And I think
Yeah.
that's so
Yeah.
important. But how did you feel after you'd sort of made that aware
Mm,
to your family, to your closest? Was there a sense of relief that you'd said that?
absolutely.
And
Yeah. It's great because I can't describe the feeling other than feeling. I always use the feeling that it was raining in my head, and it sounds a
mm,
bit dramatic, but essentially, not every day. Don't get me wrong. There were most days I was okay, but then I kind of felt this cloud over me, and then as soon as I spoke about it, it sounds really cliche, but it did work because
mm,
I didn't care that I guess I might be judged for it. I haven't been judged at all by the four
mm,
people that I've mentioned because they get it, and I've been supported massively since that second by my wife. I can't tell you how much she's supported me, and not even just sitting down with me every so often. Are you okay? She recognises the signs that I'm getting a bit pent up or I'm getting a bit fed up
mm,
because the kids are loud and the dog's loud and hectic life. People deal with things in different ways. My wife's very good at just getting on with things, and I'm not. I'll be honest. I'm. It can take
mm,
me a little time to adjust to certain situations, but she's been ever so helpful. Just being not saying what you're shouting at the dog for or the kids, or she
mm.
knows that I've told them 3 times. Parents will obviously think, well, I tell my kids 3, 4 times, they don't listen. Um, but yeah, it's just a massive relief, and it's changed my mindset now. And I guess the more I do this sort of thing, is better. But the positivity I get from people and the messages I get after sharing my story is really helpful to me as well. But I feel like a different person. I know I still struggle. Everybody
Mm,
struggles. I'm not ashamed to say that I'm not 100% better, but
mhm,
I'm a damn sight better than I was before. But yeah, it kind of feels like a different person's come out of me a little bit.
mm. Yeah, and that's so important, isn't it, to acknowledge that. And one thing that I think about an awful lot as somebody who's been on a very similar journey to you is I
Mm.
think there's a very fine line between what we call depression and what we call anxiety. And if you suffer from
Yes.
one, chances are you'll get drawn into the other. What's your
Yeah.
sort of perspective on the differences and the commonalities between those two things, and how, for example, you mentioned you've had anxiety yourself,
Mm.
and for me, anxiety was very much something that manifested itself physically, in that I thought I was physically ill and had very real
Sure.
symptoms. My brain was
Yeah.
tricking me.
Yeah.
How was that for you in terms of your experiences with anxiety?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that, well, I was in denial that I wasn't depressed until I spoke to a professional. I spoke to doctors that everything. I remember a doctor saying to me, Adam, I'm going to stop you there because you are depressed. And I didn't
Mm,
think I was. I was just telling him how I felt. I just thought I was a bit worried about stuff and anxious. I think being a mental health first aider and having that experience, the training courses that we have,
mm,
it shows you that everybody has anxiety. So that can start from a little worry around money, work, whatever it might be. You might worry about driving into work. Something that seems insignificant to someone else
mm,
might be major to you, and that's okay. But I guess that with the further you get into the depression side of things, I wasn't kind of at first. I didn't think I was moping around and being the typical depressed thing that you would imagine, but I didn't have much motivation to do much. Very tired, very I don't really fancy doing that. Not going out with friends, not seeing guys asking me to go out for a drink with them and saying let's go watch football. But didn't want to do it. I got very family focused, I guess, and just thought,
mm,
well, all that matters is
mm.
making sure my wife and the kids are okay. But I didn't realise that I needed to be a better person in order to be better with them.
Yeah.
So I think there is a fine line. I think that everybody has anxiety, and you might not think that you have. But I
Mm,
guess it's just recognizing that the one thing we don't do is I think as human beings is actually be kind to ourselves and say well done. There are
yeah.
times I've been to Madrid recently, and I'll be honest, the first night I was awful. I was upset. I wanted to come home. It was a once in a lifetime opportunity to go and watch some decent football, and all I could think about was thinking, I just want to be at home.
Yeah.
But obviously a lot of this comes from lack of sleep, or I'm more anxious when I'm tired. So the day after in Madrid, I had 2 more days in Madrid, and I was with my brother, my dad, and my nephew. So it's not like I was with strangers. I was with people, family, and I was fine the day after because I thought, right, I need to do this. It's my brother's birthday. It's not fair on him. So I wanted to do it for him. I did. But what I did when I got home, again, was kind of celebrate that fact that I'd done okay. And to other people, they think, well, you're crazy. You've had 3 days away from your kids. That's bliss. You've been watching one of the best football teams in the world. What's the matter with you? And I think that's what the point I try and get across to people. That, to me, was massive. To other people, nothing. No problem being away from the kids. I've got to get better at that. And you know what? I'm really pleased that I did, and I'm really pleased that I came out of it. Again, a bit of a stronger person. My 9-year-old Harry, he was the one that was telling me, I'm really proud of you and you did really well. And that for him at 9 years of age is brilliant, because that's what I'm trying to get him to do, is be a bit more emotional around if you're feeling rubbish, you tell people. And that, again, we go back to the generational thing. But yeah, just celebrate the fact that when you've done something right and something that you might not think is significant, it is. But the biggest advice, I guess, to people is that everybody has a level of anxiety. It's how you control it, and you don't let it consume you. And if you feel like it is, then get some help.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and well done for you for using what you've learned essentially to get through that experience, because it is a journey. You're never cured of this. It's finding ways to manage your triggers and manage situations that you're in, and the travel aspect of it I can relate to a little bit, because I'm actually going away tomorrow for work. I'm going down to London for a couple of days, and it's preying on my mind of, oh, will I forget something? And the usual sort of stuff. And I know it will be fine. I think half the time it's just the build up to things for me.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think people need to realise that is a form of anxiety. I think people think anxiety, depression's this big monster that we either don't talk about, or I'm not depressed. You might not be depressed, but worrying, like you say, driving into London, you might think, oh, I don't know what train to get on, or I don't know how to get there. And that's okay. That's, that is anxiety, and that happens. But it's just recognising. I think the biggest lesson I've taken, Peter, is that not to let it consume you, because it can quite easily, and it has done with me, and it can still do with me. But certain techniques that are available, and counting backwards from 10, breaking the cycle of if you're in a bit of a worry about something. Mental health, I believe, is individual to you. I think, like I said, if you're worried about something, somebody might think, what are you worried about? But it's for you. There's no level to it. You can suffer with it. But I think the more men in particular, like I say, talk about it. I think there's an example the other day that I was speaking to someone, and he said, well, I've got a really close friend who's quite an emotional guy, but I don't want to put it on him. I don't want to, burden him. And that's the example of what we need to change. If someone doesn't want to talk about it, they won't talk about it. But you'd be surprised who will actually think, do you know what, my friend's struggling, so I'll help just by listening. You don't have to be a professional. You don't have to be trained. But I think the attitude of men at the moment, especially guys my age, your age, are just, I'll just not tell anybody. I'll not burden them with it. But as soon as you do, the right people stick around. That's what I think now. And I'm going to say I'm living proof of it, but I am, because I've told the right people, and they actually care. So yeah, I guess as a nation, as a world, we don't talk about it enough. But we talk about if you've been off for 6 months with a physical illness, you come back to work, everybody checks in with you, and if you're off with stress for 6 months, there's very little talk. They don't know whether to talk about it to you, but that's where I'm passionate about the most, is just trying to break that stigma, like I said at the beginning, to get men talking. And I know it's not going to be a fix, because some men don't, but we need to talk about it more.
And there's a ton of stigma still to this day. I mean, a quarter of the way through the 21st century,
Mm.
we're still nervous about admitting that
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
taking
it's very,
medication, we're having counseling, we're getting treatment for our brains, basically, which is an organ in the body.
yeah,
And you wouldn't think
yeah,
twice
yeah,
about getting treatment for your heart, your lungs, and all, and that sort of thing. So we've got some work to do, but I think we're getting there,
yes.
definitely.
I do, and I think that companies like Insight, like I say, are doing a lot more. I think that the inclusion side of things is really important, and including mental health as a disability is important. And I know that we're doing that quite a lot of that with our groups that we do. So it's getting there. But again, I'm not expecting every man in the world to start and talk about his feelings. I guess the thing is,
Mm.
I've got to think about it's not talking about your feelings, it's just saying you feel a bit rubbish.
Yeah.
And somebody might be going through the same or have gone through the same. But you don't have to sit down and talk about it like a therapy session. It's more just have a chat. And that's where I'm at now.
Yeah, it helps so much. I always do say talking's the best medicine, and just getting something off your
Absolutely, yeah.
chest. And you don't
Mm-hmm.
even have to go that deep into what's troubling
No,
you. Just sometimes having a chat about day-to-day things and catching up with a friend, little small things in a day can pick you up a little bit and give yourself a
yeah,
little win. But I
yes.
I do. I do worry still that you look at statistics, and statistics aren't everything, right? But
Mm,
you look at the figures for suicide in males around the
mm,
world, and that sort of thing. And
yeah.
what do you think we need to do? What steps can we take to support each other as men and get this message across? What do you think are the important steps that we can take to get this awareness out there and break some of the stigma, especially within males?
I think we need buy-in from the powers, whether that's government or whether that's workplace
Mm,
partners. I think it's vital that we.
mm,
I do, I'm going to use the word educate, but it's essentially make partners aware that if
mm,
your husband or wife, is struggling, especially for men, if your husband's struggling or your partner's struggling, is noticing those signs and helping them again, not by sitting down to them and turning it into a therapy session, just understanding the triggers that they might have.
mm,
I genuinely think, Peter, it's vital that we get it into the curriculum
mm,
for kids. Maybe not too young, because I'm conscious that people still have that. Oh, I don't want to tell my 10-year-old about mental health. It's
mm,
not as, like you say, in depth. Let's talk about mental illness. It's just about having that message of what can we do. The male suicide rate is higher than any other killer in this country in particular,
yeah,
but nobody does anything about it. If it was a pandemic or if it was cancer or anything else, we'd be talking about it. There'd be adverts on the TV about it. I think we're doing more in relation to football teams are doing a lot more. I'm a
yeah.
big football fan. I resonate with that because I see my football team do it. I see other football teams do it. Some men who are, I guess, of an older generation might watch that advert and think, all right, okay, well, one of my favourite players is talking about it. Great. So
Mm,
that's good. We're doing good things with that. But I think getting it into the curriculum, getting it at the forefront of people's minds, because one of my frustrations is because it's so high, people are losing loved ones because we're not dealing with it.
yeah.
And we've all lost someone. It's the worst feeling in the world, whether it's a grandparent or a parent, whoever it might be. But to say that we don't do enough about it, it does frustrate me. I'll be honest, because I think we need to educate a younger generation, even if it is, year 8 upwards in schools, because they're a little bit
Mm,
older. They're 12, 13, coming in, into puberty and turning into adults. They're obviously going to feel different things, and they're going to feel tragic stories about a 14-year-old boy that unfortunately committed suicide because it's something to do with his internet history, or with the mobile apps that you can get nowadays. It's just really, I think that's what we need to do. We get more buy-in, and we've had a
mm,
recent meeting here at Insight, and I've said, look, we can do this. Myself, Peter, the group, we can talk around mental health, but unless it is backed and it's funded, and
mm.
the big bosses are turning around and saying, look, I struggle as well, that's going to resonate higher with a lot of people. So I think that that's what we need to do, and just keep pushing this message. There are great charities out there. There's mine. There's Baton of Hope, Mike McCarthy, that's pushing men's mental health in particular. And it's really just getting it out there and get that message out.
Yeah, and it's so important that those big institutions like the football clubs are being part of this conversation, because they have a very powerful part to play in that, without a doubt, and continue to normalize these conversations. And just as importantly as anything, and you've already touched on this point, is that once you've been through a mental health illness or anxiety or a period of depression, and you recover, and like we said, I don't think you ever fully recover. You learn how to manage these things. You're never quite the same again, but it's different for everyone, obviously. I think it's important to normalize that it's an ongoing process, and this is why I know you're the same, talk about how I'm feeling very regularly, and I will sort of share quite openly, even on social media. And some people will say to me sometimes, "Well, why are you doing that? Do you not think you're putting your job at risk by saying how you're feeling in the morning and you can't bear the thought of the day?" And well, no, it's important to share this, and I think that's where we need to get to, and hopefully with each generation we'll get there, because I think you and I have both experienced maybe family in our lives of a older generation who have. I know I certainly did, with my mother, who used to talk about depression as something that happened to weak people, and that stayed with me. That really stayed with me. So.
Yeah, I've had people say that suicide is it's selfish, and I guess you don't know until you've been in that position. It's really tough that people don't see another way out. But the more we talk, and the more I keep mentioning talking, but it is the best way to do it. It makes you feel a lot better. My biggest message, as I said, is just for men in particular: don't think that you're being weak. Don't think that your mate's going to turn around and say, tell me about his feelings. It's not like that. Just talk, and like I said, it does relieve that pressure a little bit. Even if it's 5%, it does it.
Yeah. And there's always somebody to listen, even if not a friend or a family member. There are services out there, and I'll put some links in the description of this video. So important. If you're watching this, do please get help. Do please reach out. You're not alone. And the thing I always say is, you may be feeling like this right now, right here, and feeling like there's no way out, there's nowhere to turn, but there is, and tomorrow's another day. I've had some of the worst days in my life where I thought, I can't get through this. There's no way I can get through this. And I've had dark thoughts, depressing thoughts. And then the next day I've potentially had the best day I've ever had. So
each day is a different day. I think that it's actually a song, to be fair, but we've sang it in our house, and it's not something like, it's not just a bad day. It's a bad day, not a bad life. So days are rubbish sometimes. Everybody has rubbish days. We were saying yesterday that myself and my wife just felt really ratty and really annoyed with everything, every little thing. But that's okay, because we talked it out and we had a beer and we were fine. Not suggesting alcohol's the way forward, but sometimes a beer helps because it takes the edge off. But yeah, get the help. I got the help. Like I say, I'm nowhere near fixed, but having things, medication helps. And I know I was reluctant to do that in the first place. Thinking, again, the advice I was getting was, well, you might get addicted to them and you're never going to be off them. And it's fine, because if you take a tablet for cholesterol or for your heart rate, whatever it might be, I take one because it makes me feel leveled out. It doesn't make me feel high or, any different. It just makes me feel leveled out, where things might not get to me as quickly as they used to. And if I have to take that for another 4 or 5 years, fine. But it's important that it helps me. And I'm not ashamed to say that I take a tablet every day, an antidepressant. It's the basic antidepressant, but again, it keeps me level. And I think that's important to understand, that it's not a weakness taking those either.
Absolutely. And did you find that
but we'll see.
And did you find that you had to try a couple of different antidepressants before you found the one that was right for you, or were you fortunate that the first one you tried worked for you?
I spoke to many people that have said, I tried those, they didn't agree with me. Don't get me wrong, the first 6 or 7 weeks were really difficult. They made me feel really tired and really it kind of made my symptoms worse, to be fair, but I knew I had to battle through that. But I must admit, even though it was difficult in relation to the physical symptoms, I was tired, I was, a bit ratty on edge, but I actually did feel a bit better within a few days. Now, I will never know whether that's psychological or whether that's the actual tablet that was helping me. But I was fortunate that I started on sertraline, which is, like I say, probably the entry level, if you like, and it works. I do notice when I've not had them, I'll be honest, I'm not, I'd say I don't go like this immediately, but I do feel, right, well, that makes sense. I've not had one for a couple of days, and I do forget, don't get me wrong, I do sometimes forget to take them, but that's only for probably a day or two. But yeah, I was fortunate that I went straight on them and they just leveled me out, which was great.
Oh, that's good. That's really good, because it was a bit different for me. I tried one that didn't work for me and gave me quite bad side effects. But I talked to my doctor and we changed it, and we settled on one that did and has worked for me ever since. And I've been on that for 11 years now.
Really?
And I've got no plans to come off them in the immediate future. We have a review every now and then with the doctor, and we say keep you on them, and it works. It does what it needs to do for me. But so I would say, if you are on this journey, if you're listening to this and you are starting on antidepressants and medication, and give it time, and don't panic if you do get some side effects, but always keep in touch with your doctor about that, and talk about it. And if it's not working for you after a period of time, then try another one, and you'll find the one that works for you in combination with therapy and counselling.
I was going to say, some people can just do it, Peter. Some people are naturally okay to do it with the therapy, or I had therapy and still have sort of regular checkups. But if you feel as though they're not working after 2-3 weeks, please just stay with it, because it does make a difference after that time. They get into your system and they do make you feel, as I said, I think that again, antidepressants get a bad rap and thinking they're going to send me all happy all the time. They don't. They just level you out enough to not panic about certain things, or not overthink things. I'm a big overthinker. Again, even before being a parent, I was a big overthinker. So I still overthink. I'm still bad for it. Just ask my wife. But yeah, I'm much better at not overthinking. And I think that's down to the tablets.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's I was exactly the same, and don't get me wrong. You say I still do overanalyze things, but it does level me out. It enables me to get through things and not panic so much. So that's a good thing. And just remember, if there's any stigma out there about you taking it, which there shouldn't be these days, it's medicine at the end of the day. It's something to help you to feel better, for an organ in your body, which is your brain. And we know so little about the brain. It's probably the organ in the body we understand
the most complex.
We're still learning about it, aren't we? Anyhow, Adam, this has been a wonderful conversation. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I think you're an absolute star with an insight and in the mental health and well-being community. Keep talking, keep telling the story, as will I. I think we're very kindred spirits in that regard, and I'm glad that we've got to know each other. And before we wind up the episode, is there anything else you'd like to share or say before we finish?
I think it's the message, just please forget about the stigma, forget about what people might think. The right people will support you that you're telling. It does make a difference to talk to people. I know it's not easy for people to talk, but just know that you're not alone. A lot of times I do this, as I said, I do presentations, I'll talk about my own personal journey, and it's important that we talk to each other as men, or talk to whoever you feel comfortable with. But yeah, we'll, like you said, Peter, we'll put some links into to helplines and that sort of thing, but just keep talking.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today, Adam. Really appreciate it. Thanks for joining me, and we'll talk again real soon.
Thanks, Peter. Take care, guys. Thank you.